Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Our mission today, well, it's to crack open a single source. A review of this 2023 IPRESS ebook, AWS IoT, with Edge ML and Cybersecurity.
And right off the bat, the reviewer highlights the book's main goal, really pushing the reader to question, innovate, and importantly, act.
That emphasis on questioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels key for something moving as fast as IoT.
Definitely. And the review stresses the depth and breadth.
Oh, yeah.
It apparently covers, the foundations like AWS IoT Core, GreenGrass, SiteWise.
Okay, the core service.
But then goes all the way up to using Amazon QuickSight for business intelligence and even machine learning inference.
Wow, okay. So quite the scope.
Yeah, the review called it a truly holistic approach. It really tries to connect all these different AWS pieces you need for real IoT stuff.
Makes sense. So our aim for this deep dive is basically to unpack that review and pull out the most interesting, maybe the most useful insights for you listening.
Sounds good.
Let's start where the book seems to start, with those foundational bits.
Right. So the reviewer found the book, surprisingly perhaps, quite easy to read, and genuinely interesting, even starting with the absolute basics.
Like, what even is IoT?
Exactly. What are things in this whole context? And then, crucially, setting up the AWS IoT development environment.
And a key point the reviewer pulled out early, it seems, was just how simple AWS has made that initial setup.
Yeah.
Getting the dev environment going is described as, well, very easy, mostly because AWS gives you these pre-built, kind of intuitive user interfaces.
That's a huge plus, isn't it, removing those early headaches? Something else the reviewer noted was the book highlighting AWS's focus on privacy and, customer needs.
How so?
Mentioning features like just-in-time registration and provisioning for devices, specific features for managing devices securely and easily.
Managing potentially millions of devices.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd need those mechanisms.
Yeah.
Interesting the book calls them out. It also introduces MQTT.
Ah, yes. Which the reviewer points out is a fundamental shift from maybe traditional internet protocols, describing it as the core message queuing telemetry transport protocol, essential for how these devices talk.
And creating the things themselves, the devices within AWS.
Also presented as pretty intuitive, again, using those friendly UIs that AWS provides.
Okay, now here's something the reviewer highlighted that really stood out, especially maybe for developers who've been around a while.
Oh, what's that?
They noted the book shows how knowledge you might have picked up 20, even 30 years ago can still be directly useful today.
Really? In
Oh,
the
yeah.
world of AWS IoT? How?
Well, the example given was AWS IoT rules. So these rules get triggered when messages from devices match certain criteria, right?
Okay.
And the actions are implemented using an SQL-like syntax.
SQL-like?
Yeah, the reviewer mentioned a specific select statement example that looks almost identical to standard SQL you might have written decades back.
No way.
Just instead of a database table, it's referencing an AWS directory structure.
That's fascinating. So it bridges old skills with new tech. That's actually really encouraging.
Right, so building on those basic things and how they communicate.
Yeah.
Where does the book go next, according to the review?
Well, from handling individual devices, it moves into the need for virtual versions, digital twins, basically.
Right, for security, better data processing, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And this is where the AWS IoT Device Shadow service enters the picture.
Device shadow, okay. And what was the key takeaway there from the review?
The reviewer really latched onto its offline functionality.
That makes sense.
That ability for the shadow to hold the desired state, even if the actual device goes offline temporarily, that's, vital in the real world.
Absolutely critical, yeah, for reliability. The reviewer also liked the practical side, apparently.
Yeah, I mentioned the author gives Python code examples on GitHub, but also, crucially, includes them right in the book itself.
It's always helpful.
And something insightful about the book's structure, the reviewer thought, was its flexibility.
Flexibility how?
Well, they noticed that in some chapters, the book starts by just doing stuff using the UIs and then shows the architecture diagram later.
Oh, interesting.
But in other chapters, it starts with the architecture first.
So it's not rigidly design, then build.
Exactly. And the reviewer felt this was important because, let's be honest, that reflects how lots of developers actually work. Sometimes you do just jump in and figure out the grand plan as you go.
That pragmatic touch seems valuable. Okay, so individual devices, they're shadows. Then the review says the book scales things up.
Yeah, it logically moves from discussing, everyday devices like phones and cameras,
Right.
to the kinds of devices you find in businesses, in heavy industry.
But making the jump to IoT, the industrial Internet of Things.
Precisely. The book gives examples from all sorts of areas: traffic management, public transport, healthcare systems, industrial pipelines. Pretty diverse.
Like simulating a conveyor belt using the AWS IoT Sitewise API.
Exactly. SiteWise being that service for industrial data collection and analysis, or doing things like image classification right at the edge.
On the device itself.
Yeah, using AWS IoT GreenGrass, which lets you run code and ML models locally.
Okay, so once you're gathering all this data, this telemetry from these big, complex systems.
The next logical step is making sense of it all, right?
Right.
And that's where the book insightfully brings in machine learning and ML inference.
To automate decisions or make predictions from that flood of data.
You got it. The book apparently spends a good amount of time explaining ML concepts, classifying algorithms, mentioning frameworks like TensorFlow, MXNet.
So showing AWS's flexibility there too.
Yeah, it seems so. Showing you can integrate different ML approaches.
And processing massive data streams from potentially vulnerable devices scattered everywhere. That immediately flags a huge concern, which the book tackles head on.
Cybersecurity. Absolutely. The reviewer really emphasized this. The authors make it crystal clear that AWS's security requirements are, well, exceptionally strict. Built fundamentally around the principle of zero trust.
Zero trust. The idea of basically trusting nothing by default.
Yeah.
Even inside your own network.
That's the one. No implicit trust. Everything, user, device, service, has to be verified. Every single time.
Wow.
The reviewer even quoted this powerful AWS proverb the book includes: "Dance as if nobody is watching and secure yourself as if everyone is."
Huh. Okay, that definitely drives home the point. That level of vigilance needed for these interconnected systems.
It really highlights how security isn't just bolted on at the end. It's woven through everything discussed, from registering a device right through to the ML analysis. It's foundational.
Wow, okay. So we've sort of traced the book's path through the review's eyes. Started with the IoT basics,
The things, the communication.
moved to industrial applications, the IoT side,
Right, site-wise, GreenGrass at the edge.
then integrated machine learning to actually use all that data,
Making sense of the telemetry.
and wrapped it all in that critical layer of cybersecurity based on zero trust.
Yeah, and we saw the reviewer point out how the book makes getting started feel easy with those interfaces.
Right, the intuitive UI point.
Showed how old skills, like SQL, can surprisingly still apply.
That was a cool connection.
And introduced really powerful concepts like the device shadows offline capability and that pervasive zero trust principle from AWS.
The reviewer's final take was pretty strong too, saying they felt like a new person with broader intelligence after reading it carefully.
That is high praise. Suggests the book really connects the dots, doesn't just list features.
Yeah, fostering a more integrated understanding of the whole ecosystem.
Hmm.
So thinking about that AWS commitment to zero trust, verifying every interaction across such a huge range of tech, from tiny edge sensors to cloud ML,
Yeah.
what does that deep-seated principle really imply for how we should think about designing any complex interconnected system in the future? Not just on AWS, but anywhere.
That's definitely something to ponder. How far does that suspicion need to go?